I'd like to begin today in the book of Proverbs, chapter 1. Proverbs, chapter 1. I know a lot of us have different Bibles here. We use different Bible translations. I think that's a good thing. I recommend everybody have at least 3 Bible translations to cover the spectrum of translation. One formally equivalent, one dynamically equivalent, and one kind of right in the middle that balances out the two. Today I'm going to read one that is more dynamic than formal because I like how it reads. I think it does a real good job at bringing across the Hebrew and the Greek of the Older Testament. That is the Good News Bible. Proverbs chapter 1 verses 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David and king of Israel. Here are proverbs that will help you recognize wisdom and good advice, and understand sayings with deep meaning. They can teach you how to live intelligently and how to be honest, just, and fair. They can make an inexperienced person clever and teach young people how to be resourceful. These proverbs can even add to the knowledge of the wise and give guidance to those who are educated, so that they can understand the hidden meanings of Proverbs and the problems that the wise raise. To have knowledge, you must first have reverence for Yahweh. Stupid people have no respect for wisdom and refuse to learn. May Yahweh bless His word to our hearts this day. Today, I do not have a deep exegesis to share with you. It's been kind of a long and different week for me. You ever have those kind of weeks? Long week. I know it's the same amount of time, but it seems longer. It's been a little different. Sometimes your regular routine works out, but other times things happen that upset your planned schedule. I am glad, though, that life is not always the same. It's more adventurous and interesting that way when things are different. I have one simple admonition today to give you and to bring you as a minister of Yahweh, and that is this. Appreciate the good people that Yahweh places in your life and be thankful for them. Appreciate the good people that Yahweh places in your life and be thankful for them. Each and every one of us ought to be thankful to be sitting here today because we're in a group of some of those good people. There are people in here that you can count on. I've had to count on some people in here before, and they pulled through for me. People in here will have your back, people who will help you and teach you how to live intelligently, how to be honest, just, and fair, just like we read in Proverbs chapter 1. I'm so thankful for down-to-earth people. I'm thankful for salt-of-the-earth people. I'm thankful for people who are not fake, who do not try to be something they aren't, but just be theirself. Show kindness. Have an ear to listen when you need to talk. People who will rejoice with you when it's time for you to rejoice because they're thankful for their brother or sister. But also, they will weep, mourn with you when it's time for you to weep and mourn, because when you hurt, they hurt. When you're down, when they're down, you're down. When I meet people like this, it makes me want to be a better Matthew. It makes me want to be a better person and to be one of those type people that others enjoy being around. Now, I know that we can't have the same feelings all the time. We're human, so we have ups and downs, all of us. Sometimes our ups are real good ups, and we're up for a while, but sometimes our lows are real down there, real far, and we're down for a while. But you need to realize that every time you are around someone in your life, you have the power in your tongue, in your speech, to either encourage or discourage. You have the power to be positive or to be negative. You have the power to dwell on the good things in life or talk about all the bad things. You can be an energy giver or you can be an energy sucker. I like energy givers, so I want to be one of those type people. I got a call this week from Mr. Michael Boss. He's one of the owners of the old Boss Brothers store in Loganville, old feed and hay store that I've done business with for many years now. Part of the reason I like Boss Brothers is because it's slow-paced. It's a local business. It's not a big franchise. I like to support local businesses where I can not only go in and buy feed and hay at a fair price, but I can stop for 5 or 10 minutes and I can talk to Ken Boss or Michael Boss. I've built up a friendship with them over the years, and we can just do like the old timers used to say. I know some of you heard of it, shoot the breeze. So we just shoot the breeze for a little bit. And then they'll ask me how my business is going because they're concerned about my business. How is my life going? How's your life going, Matthew? They tell me they appreciate me coming in and trading with them, and then they end with a handshake and a smile. And them brothers got big hands and a firm handshake, and they smile at me when it's time to say goodbye. Well, we got to work at Mr. Boss's personal home this week. He's got a 50-acre farm over here in Oxford. And that man stood out there the entire time and talked to me and Benjamin while we pumped the septic tank. Just about nothing. Just about life. We talked about his farm, his animals, his family, and then we talked about our family life too. We talked about how good it was to have people that we can count on and do honest business with. It's becoming more and more rare in this day and time. We were working the whole time, but we had a good time out there with Mr. Boss because we have mutual respect and friendliness with each other. You know, back in the book of Genesis, chapter 13, Abram and Lot were out looking for some land. There wasn't enough pasture for both of them because each of them had so many animals, and there was some strife. There was an argument that broke out between the herdsman of Lot and the herdsman of Abram. But Abram, the righteous, the father of faith, he stopped the argument dead in its tracks. He said there in verses 8 through 9 basically this. He said, we're relatives, Lot, and your men and my men should not be quarreling. So you choose your land first. Abram took the high road. He preferred his brother. That's wisdom and kindness. He said, I don't want to argue. You go first. I'll take what's left. The Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, not blessed are the troublemakers. You know, trouble follows some people around everywhere they go. There's trouble. And there's a reason for that. It's because they make trouble. I once heard an old preacher tell a story about a husband and a wife on a car ride. And the wife started smelling this awful smell. She said, honey, it stinks. Roll the window down. So she rolls the window down. The smell got worse. Roll the window back up. The guy said, well, maybe we need to get on through this part of town. But the further he got, the worse it smelled. The man sped up, but the longer they drove, the worse it got. And they eventually stopped at a gas station, and he popped the hood to look at the engine, and lo and behold, under the engine hood, there was a can of week-old sardines he'd been chewing on when he was working on his car about a week ago, sitting there in a little space above the engine. And that's where the smell had been coming from all along. And this old preacher I was listening to, he said this. He said, if everywhere you go smells bad, then you might have old sardines under your own hood. But then there are people who make peace. They bring peace. They try to be a peacemaker in everything. There are people that you meet that have a calming effect on life. They're a joy to be around because there's little to no stress, worry, negativity. They always look on the bright side. They always say, well, let's make sure we look on the good side. They're what the Bible calls a peacemaker. How many know we should be peacemakers? Yeshua said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they'll be called the children of Yahweh. We did another job this week that impacted me in a good way. It was for an older couple. Before we pulled up to the job, I had already talked to the man that owned the house, and I told Benjamin, I said, I think this guy that we're doing next, I think he's going to be a talker. How many know there's talkers in life? There's quiet people and there's talkative people. Well, I think he was going to be a talker, and boy, was I right. So he met us out in the driveway, and boy, he started talking and told us about all the stuff that had happened with the septic tank over the years. He lived there since 1979. And his wife came out, and guess what? She was a talker too, Brother Sandy. But the more that we were out there around them, I started to see that these were super duper nice people. me and Benjamin were working, and they stood out there and talked to us while we were working. And then she had the bright idea to go to the shed, and she got her lawn chairs. And she brought the lawn chairs over there by the septic tank. And they set the chairs up. She got her a drink. He got him a cigar. And they sat out there and they kept talking. I kept having to rev the engine down on the excavator so I could hear what they were asking me or what they were talking about. Super duper nice people. I didn't mind that they talked because they were peacemakers. It felt peaceful to be around those people. I don't know what they believed. I tried to shine my light to whatever capacity I could in that short time. But they were making peace. You know, when people meet you, they will walk away thinking that you either had a nice spirit or an ugly spirit. They will get an impression either way, good or bad. They'll get in their car and they'll think, man, that was a nice person. Or they might think, man, I'm glad I got away quick from that. It's one of the two. So make it a point to leave people a good, peaceful feeling. Be one of those people that can be appreciated, a good person that can be appreciated in the life of somebody else. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verse 37, it says that the common people listened to Yeshua with gladness in their heart. See, He got along with the majority of the crowds because He loved the ordinary people. He treated them with respect. He saved His harsh rebukes for the leaders in the community. He gave them up the road, sure. But the common people, He met them with gentleness, met them with niceness and kindness. Yeshua was the highly empowered Hebrew Messiah, the unique Son of Yahweh. Yet, He emptied Himself. Remember, the text says there, I think it's in the Gospel of John, that when He was on the torture stake, He had the power to call down so many legions of angels to help Him. But He withheld that power. He was meek. Meek is strength under discipline. He was very disciplined there. So He emptied Himself. He was in the form of Elohim, Philippians 2 says. More so than any man that had ever lived, He was in the form of Elohim. Yet He took upon Himself the form of a servant, or the rank of a servant. Yeshua was actually one of the common people Himself. He was born in the little town of Bethlehem. He was laid in a feeding trough. He was raised in a small, I like to say, one-like town of Nazareth. He was a carpenter's son. Yeshua was not flashy. He did not try to keep up with the popular crowd. He just lived His life serving others. He says there at the end of Matthew 20, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give His life as a ransom for many. So He was nice and kind and cordial, and the common people appreciated Him. Therefore, when the time was right, because He humbled Himself, He brought Himself low, He abased Himself, Yahweh highly exalted Him at His resurrection, and He ascended into heaven at the right hand of the Father. Our entire life should seek to imitate the humility of Yeshua. We should not walk around boastful, thinking we're better than everybody else, being rude, intolerant, obnoxious, like some of the Pharisees and Sadducees were. I don't know about you, but I like simple people. They're usually some of the wisest and kindest people. I think about the farmer, Sister Meredith knows. Simple people. I remember one time I was by myself out on a job, and a man walked out of the house, and I didn't know it at the time, but I later found out he was 82 years old. I knew he was old when he walked out, but wasn't sure how old. I always like to ask old people, how old are you? But I know it's maybe not the most respectful thing to do, right away at least, especially if they're a lady. I eventually asked this man, he said, I'm 82 years old, but when he came out, he had a shovel there on his little bitty deck, and he wanted to help me dig up the septic tank. I let him help. I was worried, but I let him help because I could tell he wanted to do something that he used to be able to do, but he could no longer do. And so he got out there and he done what he could as an 82-year-old man. He wanted to feel young again. Hopefully he did. Afterwards he went inside and he brought out 2 glasses of water. He handed me one, and I can still see him. I can picture him in my mind. He said, son, let's sit down here in this shade and let's rest for a while now. And when he said that, I knew he was lonely and he wanted to talk. And so we sat there. I was probably around 30 years old. It's been a little while now. And we sat there for probably a good half hour and we talked. He was a small man. He was a simple man. But the manners that he had and the stories that he told me that day impacted me so much that I still remember him and I can picture him till this very day. I'm talking about appreciating the good people that Yahweh places in your life. That's what I'm talking about today. Be thankful for the good people that Yahweh places in your life. You don't have to use big words, wear fancy clothes, or have a bunch of money. You just have to be kind and courteous. And that don't cost you a penny to do so. You want somebody to listen to a truth, a deep truth that you have and you hold dearly? You want them to listen to you? Be a friend to them first. Show them you care about them genuinely. It's got to be genuine. We don't want no flattery or no facade. It's got to be genuine. And when they see that you care and you're genuine, a friend, they will listen to the truths that you have when they see you're the real deal. I tell you what, over the last pushing 30 years now, I've met a lot of characters in religion, especially in this faith. Some characters have come right through this building. And I tell you what, some of them have been strange in the real sense of the word. But a lot of them have been super nice people. I appreciate the people that Yahweh has placed in my life. I'd like to tell you a little bit now. I haven't spoke about him in a while. But I'd like to tell you a little bit now about a man that I knew and was one of my mentors that I studied with. His name was Orlando Smith. Brother Orlando Smith, I met him back in 1998, late 1998 at Brother Arnold's house. Brother Orlando was the first man to ever tell me about the tassels. It's hard to think about it now. It's weird to think about it now. I've taught classes on the tzitzit, but there was a time when I didn't know what they were. If somebody said tzitzit, you might as well have been speaking Russian, Spanish. I don't know much Spanish. I took 2 years of it in high school, but I didn't listen. I didn't know what the word was. That's weird for me to think about, but there was a time. I still loved Yahweh the best that I knew how at that time. But there was a time I didn't wear tassels. I didn't know what they were. Brother Orlando, he walked in the room. He had strings hanging from his clothes with royal purple. He believed that the techelet was royal purple instead of the blue. And I disagree respectfully with him on that. But that's okay. It's all right. We don't have to agree on everything to make it to the kingdom of heaven. He wore those tassels on the four borders of his garment. He wore one around each wrist and he wore one around his neck. And he walked in there and I said, my goodness, I got to talk to this guy. Well, Brother Arnold, my father-in-law, he'd already known Orlando. But I asked him about the tassels and we opened the Bible right there in Numbers 15, 37 through 41 and Deuteronomy 22 and 12 and went over some Newer Testament text. He walked me through it and that night I tied my first set of tassels. I hung the loop instead of my big toe. Me and Sister Kimberly like to hang it on our big toe now when we make the tassels. But instead of my big toe, I hung it on a little hook beside Arnold and Hazel's wood stove. It's still there today. I can show it to you. I hung that loop on that hook and I tied that first tassel like Brother Orlando showed me how. He showed me how. Yahweh was in control, but he used Orlando as his agent to show me. See, Orlando was a dedicated man of Yahweh. When I began to know him, he was already older. He was a peaceful man. He talked very slowly. He ended all of his sentences, not all, a lot of his sentences he ended with, and everything. So you'd be talking to him, he'd say, you know, over there in the book of Psalms and everything. And Yahweh is a good father and everything. And we got to keep his commandments and everything. He said that so often, but he talked real slow. Brother Orlando reminds me of 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 11, which says this. Paul wrote, try your best to live quietly, to mind your business, and to work hard, just as we taught you to do. Orlando studied a lot. My mother-in-law still has the same coffee table in her living room where Orlando would set out all of his books. See, this was before we had really the internet taken off. We had Franklin Bible computers, but Orlando just had books. And he'd have that whole table covered with books, and he would study all day long, Brother Sandy. You'd have loved him. All day long. Sometimes I'd be there, he'd get tired, and he'd nod off, and I'd let him sleep. He'd wake up, shake his head, and grab his book again. Usually had the big J.P. Green interlinear in front of him with both Older and Newer Testaments. Brother Orlando had calloused knees, and they were from kneeling down to pray. He did not offer that information to me. He did not come out and tell me that. But one day I called him, and he had his pant leg up, and he was rubbing his knee, and it looked rough. And I asked him, I said, Brother Orlando, what's wrong with your knee? Why does it look like that? Remember, I'm just a teenager at the time. Long story short, he told me he always got on his knees to pray. He said, I don't pray any other way. I get on my knees. That's how I show some humility before the Almighty. Orlando had 2 silver trumpets that he would blow at the same time out of each corner of his mouth. He would hold them like this. A Tennessee newspaper one time took a picture of him on top of his house on the ridge. 1 foot on this side, 1 foot on the other, on the top ridge of his house, blowing the trumpets. I've got the newspaper clipping somewhere. It's either at my cabin or Brother Arnold's house somewhere. Lord knows if we'll ever find that newspaper clipping. But the county that he lived in Milan, Tennessee, the county that he lived in was trying to get him to move some of the trucks out of his yard, pull trucks, diesel trucks that had been there for forever and a day, for a long time. And he didn't believe he needed to move the trucks, and neither did I, neither did Brother Arnold. So Orlando climbed up on top of his roof, and he started blowing the trumpets against the county in defiance of the local government persecution, he said. Orlando meant business when it came to Numbers 10, verse 10. When you're oppressed in the land, blow with the trumpets. Brother Arnold picked that up from him years later. Brother Orlando wore a hat all the time, but it never had the bill on it. He would always cut the bill off of the hat, like a kippah or a yarmulke. His understanding was we're a kingdom of priests, and because Yahweh commanded the priests in Exodus 28 to wear bonnets for glory and for beauty, that he wanted to be like them. That was his understanding. I have a little bit different understanding, but that was his. Most of the time, his hat would have the sacred name on it in Aramaic or Paleo script, just like the priest would. Once, though, he walked in, and he had cut the bill off of his hat, and it was a Philadelphia Eagles hat. I don't know why he had that Philadelphia Eagles hat. I started wondering maybe he didn't even know it was a football team. Brother Orlando never talked about football. Maybe he thought it stood for they shall mount up with wings like eagles. I don't know. Maybe he did. Probably got it at a thrift store. But he came in with that Philadelphia Eagles hat, and I chuckled. Brother Orlando had a long white beard, untrimmed. He also had long locks off of his temples. He believed in Leviticus 19:27 just like me, but he had a little bit different understanding of it, that you weren't supposed to trim your beard or trim the hair that grows off of your temples, like some of the Hasidic or the Haredim. One time, Brother Orlando walked into the house down there, and he had trimmed his beard, but it was crooked. And I said, Orlando, what happened to your beard? He said, well, Brother Matthew and everything. He said, I got me a new t-shirt, and it's got the sacred name on it. My beard was so long that it covered up the sacred name. I wanted people to be able to see it. So I trimmed my beard, he said, but I messed up and trimmed it crooked. He said, but after I saw it crooked in the mirror, I didn't want to keep trimming because I didn't want to go any shorter. I was at the Feast of Tabernacles up in Pennsylvania one time when Rosalind was a baby. And Brother Orlando had traveled there from Tennessee. They had a huge congregational sukkah. Biggest one I've ever seen. Up at Don Beck's. One night it started to rain. I'm older at the time. I've got 4 children. My 4th one is a little baby. I said, Brother Orlando, I said, we're going to go inside the house or get in the van. Come on with us. We need to get out of this rain. Mind you now, he's probably in his 80s by this time. He said, no, I'll be fine and everything. He reached down in his sleeping bag, and I watched his hand come out. When his hand came out, he had a sheet of plastic. He pulled that plastic. I watched him. He pulled that plastic over his head and set it right there. And I saw the rain dripping on the plastic. He refused to come out of the sukkah during tabernacles. He wouldn't come out. He stayed in there to sleep that night. Orlando told me that when he prayed, he always asked Yahweh to enlarge the borders of his heart so that all of the commandments could fit there. What a prayer. Make my heart bigger, Yahweh, so that all of your commandments, every one that I need to obey, can fit. He didn't want to neglect anything in the Torah. I believe that he was a man after Yahweh's own heart, and I later realized that he was citing part of Psalm 119 in that prayer. Brother Orlando was in his 80s when he died. I was not there when he died. Nobody told me that he had died. I found it on an internet search one day when I was going to try to go and visit him. I did not attend his funeral. I do not know if he had a funeral, but I do not think that he would care either way. He was not well known on this earth, and he never tried to make a name for himself. But I promise you, his reward will be great in the kingdom of heaven. And Yahweh put Brother Orlando in my life. And I appreciate him today. He was a good man, full of faith and of the Holy Spirit. He's in the book of remembrance because he feared Yahweh and had a high regard for His name. He'll be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. As I close today, I hope one day that there's a young man that thinks about me in the same way that I think about Brother Orlando. I want to carry that torch of being one of those good people that others appreciate. I want to leave a good memory in people's minds, and I want to push someone closer to Yahweh. I want to, when somebody hangs around me, I want to cause them to draw closer to Yahweh. You know, Orlando pushed me to be closer to Yahweh. But here's the thing. He wasn't pushy. He pushed me by his wisdom, his intellect, his honesty, his integrity, his faith. All those things that Proverbs 1 talked about. That's how Orlando pushed me. He was serious about his faith. Again, Proverbs 1, 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David and king of Israel. Here are proverbs that will help you recognize wisdom and good advice and understand sayings with deep meaning. They can teach you how to live intelligently and how to be honest, just, and fair. They can make an inexperienced person clever and teach young people how to be resourceful. These proverbs can even add to the knowledge of the wise and give guidance to the educated so that they can understand the hidden meanings of proverbs and the problems that the wise raise. To have knowledge, you must first have reverence for Yahweh. Stupid people have no respect for wisdom and refuse to learn. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall think on it day and night. Be careful to do what Yah tells you to do, so that you will have good success. Don't turn to the right, don't turn to the left, but stay on the narrow path. Be careful to do what Yah tells you to do, so that you will have good success. I love everybody.